Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Educate Colin's Snap channel. How you doing? So today we're going to be talking about some decks to think about making or think about trying, in this meta. Now, obviously, this meta is pretty one-sided. If you're not running a Thanos or a Shuri deck, I think you're going to be inherently behind. But I did want to open up other options for people to play with. I did something like this last patch with the Zabu meta and had a good reception, so I want to do something similar. I do know there's a patch coming soon, so take it as you will. But still, like, even for the next couple of days, maybe one of these decks resonate with you, and you climb with it. So let's get into it. There are a ton of decks. I have technically 18, but 3 are like alternate versions of the same deck, so technically 15. But first of all, number one. Oh, one thing to start off. I did put the decks in like order of like preference in terms of like the ones near the beginning I think are going to be a little bit better overall than the ones near the end. So if you're looking to try something, you can just try something from the beginning. Obviously, you're not going to have Thanos and Shuri, everyone here, so just keep going until you see something that interests you. Now, I'm not saying they're all bad or they're all good, but I'm also not saying they're not. They're not. They could also be pretty bad. Honestly, I think they're okay. They're all going to be very different depending on what you're playing against. If you're playing against Shuri Thanos all day, you're going to need decks that can deal with Shuri Thanos, and that might mean you have to tweak the decks a little bit, right? So I'm not saying that these decks are built to specifically counter Shuri Thanos. These are just like starting points, base decks, and then you can adjust, right? Add a Killmonger, add a Shang-Chi if needed, that kind of thing. So I just need to get all of that out of the way before we get started, just so you know what you're dealing with. I do have the list, but that doesn't mean you can't change one or two cards here or there to fit your playstyle and fit your needs. So all that going on, and my lists are also pretty standard. Maybe not standard, but like they're you're not going to see like things that don't make sense because I don't know what's in your pool, right? So you really have to adjust to make it work for you. So I know I do a lot of caveats, but I don't want to say, oh, all of these decks will get you infinite and stuff like that. That's not really what we're trying to do here. I'm just trying to give people options because a lot of times people come to my stream, they'll say, hey, what can I play? And then it's like this, and this, but then they don't have these pieces. So I want to give you a ton of options and then see what works for you. Try them out. And if it doesn't work, try a different deck, right? That kind of thing. So I know I talk nonstop. I'm so sorry, but let's get into it. So first off, we have a Thanos deck. Obviously, I think this is the strongest deck in the metagame right now. Just Thanos does so much and allows you to do so much with Lockjaw. Lockjaw really being the key piece that makes you pop off. But Thanos just helps you with the flexibility. The stones give you so much versatility in how you want to approach the meta game or the board state. So they're just really strong. You can chalk a ton of broken cards into the same deck and have it all work out because the stones will be that bridge between the card pieces. So yeah, definitely a really strong deck. Obviously, I don't need to say two more. Tons of people have already made guides about this. So if you want to do that, just play Thanos. I mean, if you have Thanos, like you're not struggling. You shouldn't be here. Like, go play your Thanos games. Leave me alone. Leave us alone. Next up, we've got Shuri. So Shuri is the other dominating force in the metagame. Just the ability to put so much power down on the board is just so hard to deal with. And you can protect it with the arrow, you can protect it with the Cosmo, you can protect it with the armor. So there's just a lot of power that can get down on the board. So Also think this is a really strong deck that just works. You might want to play Killmonger or Shang-Chi if you're fighting mirrors, but this is definitely a base build that you can start off with. So yeah, very strong. I do have a Shuri Zero guide if you want to watch that. So there's definitely more to learn about this than the 2 minutes I'm going to do here. Next up, we have a Zabu Dracula list. So this one is pretty, I would say, not standard, but I just think this deck has a lot of tools going for it. So you've got Zabu that allows you to play these 3-mana Draculas, the 3-mana Enchantresses, and these 3-mana 10-point plays. You've got the Zero. The Zero can hit the Atuma, the Mary, and the Red Skull. So you have a lot going there. You've got the Enchantress and the Shang-Chi, so you have good countermeasures if you're fighting any weird type of deck list. The Enchantress can really be a big surprise that can lock people down. You've got the turn 6 Magneto, and you've got the Sunspot absorbing all of that extra power you might be neglecting, and then you have the armor for defense. So I definitely think this is actually a pretty decent list you can run, and definitely something I think is worth trying out, see if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, you can just move on, but I think it's pretty okay. Next up, we have a Darkhawk list. I think Darkhawk is still pretty good. Obviously, it got nerfed, but the 1 power does matter. I'm going to say it does matter, but I still think there is a lot of things going well for Darkhawk, and it also matches well with Thanos because the rocks are very annoying for Thanos players, and they start off with stones, which buff the Darkhawk if they can't get all the stones out. So you can really get that easy game. But here we added the Devil's Sword as well, so it does give your Mystiques 2 different options, 2 different game plans. You can see which one is working better for you that particular game and then just commit to that. So I definitely think this has a lot of room to work with, a lot of flexibility, and can be a pretty strong part of the meta. You do need Darkhawk, which is why it's not super popular or super common, but I think it can work pretty well. Next up, we have a Galactus. So I did not neglect the Galactus players. I actually put this one in last in my list, but yeah. Galactus, think it has a place. The bad thing about Galactus, if they know you're playing Galactus, it loses a lot of the power. You kind of have to surprise them, but you can't really surprise them with this current deck list. There's definitely the turn 6 deck list that will be popping up, especially after Nimrod's added. I think you're going to see more people trying turn 6 Galactus. But this one's more of a ramp one where you just ramp the Galactus and then you just have the bigger things with your Null and your Death and maybe even the Destroyer if you want to go that direction. So definitely think this is a viable strategy if you want to do it. See if it works out for you. Next up, we've got Hela. I've got 2 different Helas here. This is where the variations start to appear. We've got this regular kind of, I don't know if fair is the right word, but you know, a little RNG. I mean, all the Helas are RNG, but just a discard Hela where you're just discarding one at a time, and then you drop down the Hela. Hope it works out for you. You've got the Ghost Rider, you've got the Marvel, you've got the Infinaut Hyro, and this is just a basic Hela. I think this was pretty used before M.O.D.O.K came out, but still think it has some power to it now. And then next up, we have a more casino version of Hela. Now we're running Lockjaw. Now we're running M.O.D.O.K. So we have a ton more ways to proc a ton of cards. We also have the Invisible Woman. We are using that here just to give us a chance to get that proc going. So there's definitely a lot of things. I don't think people are really doing this type of Invisible Woman shenanigans anymore. However, people are going to know that you're running this, so you do have to be careful. But still think it could work out. It could be pretty good, and definitely want to see if it works out for you. So those are 2 different Hela builds. I think they both have a place there. Now, if we talk about Hela, we got to talk about M.O.D.O.K. And I think M.O.D.O.K, if you have a season pass card, is a card that works. I think especially with Morbius with M.O.D.O.K, I think just really, really works well. And there's definitely a clean build for M.O.D.O.K right now, just having the Morbius or the Mystique and then synergies around that. So here we have a little bit more of a She-Hulk Infinaut kind of strategy with the Dracula. You've got the discards and the Apocalypse, so you can really just get a ton of stats. Then the Dracula really locks down the win, and you have the Swarm synergy to really create a ton of plays for turn 6. And then next up, we have a more consistent, I guess, version of M.O.D.O.K, where now you have the Morbius Mystique synergy, and now you have the Nakia. The Nakia is supposed to be hitting the swarms, so now you have 5 power swarms. So when you discard them with the Colin Wing, you can really just have this huge power swing with the 5 power swarms. You can even get 4 copies of it if you hit the swords with the M.O.D.O.K. So definitely think this can also be a very powerful way of playing the game. If you want to see how this one works for you, be my guest. Now, next archetype we have is Patriot. So, hey, Patriot, strong archetype, in my opinion. But you do have to play it strategically, and you don't want to telegraph it too much. I have a Patriot guide, so we don't have to go really deep into this. You can just watch a Patriot guide if you decide this is the deck you want to play with. But Patriot, you just stack a ton of buffs, and then you Ultron, fill the board, or you Onslaught and buff up the things already on the board. So you have 2 ways of playing with it, and I think they can both work. So definitely a cool archetype, something that's been in the game for a long time and still does seem to work. So definitely think that's pretty cool. Next up, we have Dino. So we've got a Moon Girl Dino list. This is the Dino list I was using in the gameplay video. So I have a guide on this one as well. So woo, now we're hitting things I have guides on. So this is the one I was just running. I kind of liked what it did. I liked how it played. So put it in here. Definitely a list you can try. Moon Girl Dino is pretty common and a very starter or pool 3 friendly deck list. This list isn't pool 3, but if you watch the guide, you can get definitely more pool 3 or pool 2 friendly versions. Next up, we've got She-Hulk Infinaut. So this one, you really just go magic, pass on 6, drop 2 She-Hulks, preferably. So you go Moon Girl on 4, magic on 5, pass on 6, double She-Hulk Infinaut. That could be your big swing. Another thing I really like with this particular version, instead of magic on 5, right? You can now go Psylocke on 4 and then pass on 5, and you'll have the 6 mana. Now you can go She-Hulk Infinaut. So you don't get the Moon Girl synergy, but I think that still will surprise people, just being able to play Infinaut on without playing the magic. And I think that's a really cool tech in this build that I really like. And you just want to try to do well in the early game. The Iceman, the Lizard really fight for that. The Sunspot, of course. And the Ant-Man's a really good 1-drop to really play down. And since you have it protected by the armor, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And you have the Cosmo, just generically good card. Next up, we've got Ramp. So I have 2 versions of Ramp. Both using Sandman. This is the Leech version as well. So you're just ramping. You play Electro, you play Leech or Sandman, then you play Dr. Doom Odin. Like that's how you play this one. And then you have the Sunspot taking in all the extra power. If you don't do Dr. Doom Odin, you can go She-Hulk as well. So just a very simple ramp build. People like it. It's pretty clear cut. So something you can do. Next up, this is the non-Leech version. This is more ramp here. Now we have a wave in there as well. We also have an arrow in there if you want to lock people down that way. We also have a Devil Dinosaur, since we tend to keep a lot of our cards in our hands since we're just focused on playing the big stuff. So definitely another way of running Electro. If you like this one better than the last list, feel free to use it and hope it goes well for you. Next up, we've got Lockjaw Thor. So this is a classic Lockjaw list. You just play the Lockjaw, you put your cards in there, and you hope you hit Infinaut and Doctor Doom and Jane Foster. It's that simple, but it works. Lockjaw is really, really strong tool for getting out big cards, and if you can get those big cards down, you tend to do very well. So pretty common list, pretty classic list, but a classic list that works well. Next up, we have this Dracula Zoo list. So I thought this one was pretty interesting. So here we're using our 1-drops, right, for tempo, for energy, or for power. We've got the 0 here. The 0 can hit the Red Skull. So that's another way of using it, as well as it can hit the Lizard. And it's a 1 mana 3 power, which is just classically good. And then the cool tech here is the Dracula. Since you're going to be using all of your cards in your hand because they're so cheap, the Dracula will pretty much always hit your Red Skull or Infinaut. So it's a very consistent way of getting those huge power Draculas in the game. So I definitely think it's a cool strategy to see if it makes work. Try it out, see if it works for you. I thought it was cool. So you also can do Sunspot Infinaut Fury if you want to be that person. All right, moving on. We've got a Sera Surfer list. So this one is just a classic Sera Surfer. Though Surfer did get nerfed, I still think there are some playable avenues with it. Killmonger is really nice for getting those clear wins, and you can be ahead in the early game, so the KaZOOOOO can do some work for you. And then just playing the Surfer just locks it down for you. So definitely think this is still a viable one. It's near the end of the recommended deck list, so maybe not the strongest deck in the metagame right now, but I think it can work, and I think it has a place if you still like Surfer, you still have Sera, you can definitely try this one. And then this might be the last one. Well, I'm not 100% sure, but we'll see. But this one we have is a Storm Jones lockdown list. So you kind of run the main game plan is to Storm and then Jones to win a lane, and then you're going to try to win the other lane using control tools. So that's Killmonger, Shang-Chi, Enchantress. You're going to try to use those tools to win a second lane. So you want the Storm to win one, and then the Killmonger, Shang-Chi, Enchantress to win the other. And then you just have other pieces that just supplement that. You have the Hood and Nova to really give you some big power swings. You've got the Carnage with the Mysterio and the Hood. You've got the Vision in case they contest you in the Storm lane, and you have the Magneto in case they contest you in the Storm lane. You can move those cards away. So just a cool control list, not super expensive. The only card you need here, I guess you need the Hood and Mysterio. So I guess it is a little bit expensive, but they're not common cards. So maybe you have these cards, you haven't found a deck to use them in. This is something that can work for you. And I believe we have rolled over to the beginning, meaning that we have hit all of the deck lists. So yeah, definitely a long one. Well, it's not long in terms of the video, but long in terms of the number of options that we talked about. And obviously, to reiterate, Shuri, Thanos are the best, but I want other people to feel like they have other decks to try, decks that they think could work. And I just look through these. These have my they don't have stamp of approval like that Sandman list from before, but I think they're acceptable enough that I can make a video and put them in the list, right? So just keep that in mind. But overall, I just want people to feel like they have options, and the meta has settled enough that I feel like I can say, okay, these you can try. But overall, blah 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 blah. We're done here. Take care. Have a nice rest of the day. I'll see you in the next one.